Superman Legacy plot leaked? Yeah, maybe. I don't know. Let's see. So, viewer Anon, he's claiming from sources, has heard some stuff about Superman Legacy. I trust the source, but this stuff is always fuzzy. Superman's early in his career, and it isn't widely known. His big public reveal happens in the Middle East, where terrorists have gotten a hold of Kryptonian tech. Well, right off the bat, with other superheroes already established, I'm not a fan of Superman being new to the game and all that sort of thing. And then it's been back and forth with Gunn. I mean, initially he said he wanted a younger Superman. Then he said he didn't want a younger Superman. It's not an origin story, but it is early in his career, so that would be a younger Superman. Back and forth. And that it gets revealed in the Middle East, well, where terrorists have gotten a hold of Kryptonian tech. This is very similar to Black Adam. And especially since things have blown up in the Middle East recently, this might have been the initial a plot, but it might change by now to somewhere else. And I mean, you could do it, but again, and I mean, this happened in the comics, and certainly after Crisis, where Superman, was just one of the superheroes, and it kind of takes away from the idea of him being the first and the inspiration for others and stuff like that. I always thought that was key. Well, doesn't happen that much. Another angle here is, the Kryptonian tech and people being interested in it. Well, that's a lot like Batman versus Superman. Yeah, kind of doing the same thing almost. Amanda Waller, and Sam Lane, that would be Lois Lane's father, who's a general in the military and all that, send in the authority to investigate this business in the Middle East. Well, right off the bat there, if this is how they'll introduce them, I would think it'd be better to introduce them as Stormwatch, which was very much an entity of powers that be and all that sort of thing. And that the authority is formed after they break off from that, because they discover their bosses are not all that, and they turn against them and that sort of thing. So maybe it's just said that, it's the guys that will form the authority. But at this point, they're working for, Amanda Waller and the government and all that sort of thing. Just to stay accurate and all that. And especially when the core of their story is that they'll decide what goes on. That's the whole point of their name, the Authority. So anyway, so these guys are sent in to this business in the Middle East that has to do with Kryptonian technology. So they believe Superman is responsible, so they don't trust Superman. So they've got their own super people to deal with him. Superman, meanwhile, has learned of the Kryptonian tech in the Fortress of Solitude and hopes it will be the missing puzzle piece to discover where he comes from. So at this point, he doesn't know exactly where he's from. I mean, if he already has the Fortress of Solitude, more than likely he has some aspects, but it says missing puzzle piece. So again, this is similar to Man of Steel, where he's seeking out the military is looking for this alien tech that's buried in this mountain, and it turns out to be an ancient Kryptonian ship, and Superman, or Clark at this point, wants to know about it too. He goes in and finds it and all that stuff, and then that ship becomes a big part of both Man of Steel and Batman versus Superman. So treading the same material here. So finally, he says, anyway, the big bad is Brainiac behind everything. As said in the first post, I trust the source, but it's all a game of telephone with info passed ear to ear. So we'll see how much of this, if anything, pans out. Sounds solid to me, though, if it's true. Well, but it's very similar to previous approaches to it. So it's kind of, well, you know, why? But at this time, Brainiac would be the mastermind behind things instead of Lex Luthor. And again, Batman versus Superman. So it's a lot of stuff that's already happened and done before, and especially throw in Black Adam there with Middle Eastern scenarios and stuff like that. So, and then Amanda Waller along for the ride. She's introduced in Ayers Suicide Squad. So I, but anyway, Kryptonian tech, that could be the involvement of Brainiac. With Black Adam, they didn't bother to involve they should have, but then it was all coming to an end anyway. But that they had Intergang in the story being the terrorists. Maybe they'll be here again because Intergang is often used in DC Comics for that very purpose. But at the same time, their source of high-tech alien technology is Darkseid from Apocalypse. But here they might just swap out Darkseid for Brainiac, and it's Kryptonian technology that he would have after he stole Kandor and that sort of thing. Or if they're going with the Superman 90s series, the cartoon, then maybe they'll do that again where they meld the story where Brainiac is a Kryptonian entity of Kryptonian technology and stuff, which granted wipes away the whole comic book story of the origins of Brainiac, but it was still kind of a cool narrative. But you get there either way, where he would have information about Krypton that Superman wouldn't, and so there you go. Now, the fact that there's going to be a Supergirl movie, and I don't know if she hasn't been established yet. That would be curious because he's already announced they want to do a Supergirl movie. They already had a Supergirl cast. You could have done this story with Henry Cavill. You could have. And especially Brainiac and a Supergirl brought in who would know who Brainiac is. It would have flowed much better. You had stuff already in place and established. You don't have to build anything. Here, he does have to build it. And his cast is filled with all these other superheroes that have been in. On top of, he's announced the engineer, but according to this plot here, if this is how it plays out, then the whole team of the Authority will be there, whether it's called Authority or Stormwatch, But nevertheless, on top of Green Lantern will be there, Hawkgirl's going to be there, Mr. Terrific will be there. It's getting really crowded for Superman. Now they might just be a few cameos here and there, and that's all it is, and it just establishes them for later films and stuff, even though Gunn himself said, hey, I don't make movies to establish other movies. And, well, the whole point of your shared universe thing would require that to some extent. So it's back and forth with the guy, So some elements of this had been buzzed about before. Is there truth to it? Probably, unless, of course, Gunn is deliberately leaking stuff that's false, and perhaps to ferret out people. Because as you get closer to production, I know he said, look, if you haven't heard it from me or Peter, then it's not true. However, the closer you get to the production of Superman Legacy, it's unlikely you'll be able to keep it closed down for very long. I mean, eventually other people besides you and Peter are going to hear about this, and stuff leaks, And again, just like the viewer Anon says, it's a game of telephone, and that's true. There's also the idea of concept art and stuff like that, of ideas that they were thinking about pursuing, but by the time they actually get to it, they opted for something else. And this happens all the time. And it's like when you get the art of this movie or that movie in those books, it's always interesting because you'll see the concept art, and there'll almost always be a piece here and there that was descriptive of some other scene that they never shot. They just, they decided to drop that, figuring it was, repetitive or whatever, or it just didn't fit with where they wanted to go and that sort of thing. And that could be true as well. So it's like, yes, it was discussed. It just wasn't the end result. So all of that could be true. Or also, this could all be nonsense and none of it's true at all. But I do expect Brainiac to be a part of this because it's long overdue. And, you've got the CGI technology now to make a really impressive Brainiac showing, especially if you have him stealing the entirety of the city of Metropolis and putting it in a bottle. That would be cool to see. And all that stuff. So, again, always, some of it could be true. Some of it may not be true. More times than not, it's somewhere in between.